Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. So as the title suggests, today I'm going to share a few of my favorite books that I used to read in my early days as a reader, and in my opinion they're pretty suitable for beginners. But before starting this video, I'm going to share a personal experience. You can also directly jump to the book recommendations. So I distinctly remember in the year of 2013, I really got fancied with this whole idea of reading books. But I think I was more fancied with the idea of reading books rather than actually reading books. I used to like this idea of carrying books all around, to look cool. I guess that was me being shallow and pretentious at the time. And so I ordered a book for myself, and it was my first ever purchase from Amazon. It was the book, The Ulysses by the author James Joyce. And those who don't know about this book is a classic, and I don't know if it is true or not, but this book has a few of the longest sentences of English literature ever. So I didn't read this book, I didn't even understand this book, not even a single line. And again, I ordered a book for myself, and this time the book I ordered was On the Road. Again, I didn't like this book very much. I completed it like a sloth bear. I remember it was not very fascinating to me, but the thing is, I stopped reading for like an year. So I guess what I'm trying to say that it is very important to understand what kind of books you need to pick in beginning, because the book that you are going to pick should be capable of making you a reader. So I have my 4 selection criteria. Number 1 criteria is obviously the easiness of the language. The book should have a clarity of language, and it should have a simple plot, and it is well written. The next criteria for me, I think, is their accessibility, because bookstores are now being reopened, and online services are being restored, but it's still not advisable to use these services. So the book that I mentioned in these videos are all available in public domain also. The third criteria is the time it is required to complete a book. That means the book that we are going to pick in beginning should be short, or at least it should not be very lengthy. Fourth criteria, I think, should be of great importance to all of us: their relevance and teachings. Whether the book we are picking are still relevant in this modern era or not, because it will be a plus point that if a book is fun to read, as well as it expands the dimensions of our thinking and rationality. So let's start this video with book number 1, and the very first book that I'm going to recommend is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Well, this is an extremely famous book. You might have also heard of it. It's a story of a girl, and she learns various lessons throughout the book, and there is a trial going on in this book in which a black man is accused of raping a white girl. So this book talks about racism and how it is perceived from a child's point of view. Well, this book was quite a revolution in American literature, and in fact in 1999 this book was voted the best novel of 20th century. So I think, at least out of curiosity, every person of this earth should read this book in their lifetime. Also, it is a very simple book. It's not a very heavy book. It has, I think, 300 pages in it, and it is pretty suitable for beginners. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is The Night by Elie Wiesel, and this is my absolute favorite. When I read it, it moved me to tears. So this book is basically about Elie Wiesel's real experience in concentration camps during World War II. So this book is all about, separation from family and starvation and Holocaust, and mainly about inhumanity. Elie Wiesel was a writer, professor, political activist, as well as a Holocaust survivor, and he was awarded Nobel Prize in 1986. So I think you can see that this is a very precise book, and it is also a very simple book to read. But why I'm suggesting this book, again, because of its relevance. I think the books about concentration camps and World War II and Nazi Germany and about Holocaust should be read from generation to generation. The next book is Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and again a very famous book. This book is a story of a boy who is on a journey to pyramids of Egypt after having a dream of finding a treasure there, and throughout his journey he learns various lessons. But frankly speaking, I don't like this book very much, but there are so many people, including many celebrities, who are absolutely in love with this book. So I think the choice is a subjective matter here, but I think this book is in the video because of the fact that it is pretty suitable for the beginners, and the way the story glides The moment you start this book, you will be hooked to it. And the author wrote this book in only 2 weeks, and you can see that this is a very precise book. It has 150 pages only. So the next book that I'm going to suggest is Animal Farm by George Orwell, my absolute favorite. I have done a detailed review of this book on my channel also. So this book is a story of farm animals who rebel against their human masters so that they can be free and equal, but they soon end up in the dictatorship of another animal. This book is indirectly related to Russian Revolution and Joseph Stalin. This book is pretty relevant in our modern times, even after so many reforms and development and ideas. So this book is included in the greatest books of Western worlds by Encyclopedia Britannica, so I highly recommend this book. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is The Stranger by the author Albert Camus. This is a story of a man who does not believe in showing emotions, showing unnecessary emotions, and he's not very attached to the outer world, and how this soul thing is used against him to prove him as a guilty of a crime. So as you can see that this book again is a very precise book and very easy to read. It barely has 125 pages, 120 to 125 pages, but it has a very hidden meaning in it, that how life can be sometimes very absurd to you. Albert Camus had also received Nobel Prize in Literature category. In fact, he is the second most youngest person to receive this prize in Literature category, and I highly recommend this book. So the next book is a psychological horror, The Silence of Lambs by the author Thomas Harris. Actually, it's a series of 3 books, but I have only one book with me. So it's a story of a serial killer who is a cannibal, and then there is another serial killer, Buffalo Bill, who is a transgender, and both these characters are iconically described in this book as well as in the movie. And this book was also adapted in a movie starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. I know you know the movie. It was an Oscar movie. I watched the movie first and then I read it. It has around 420 pages, but I think one can endure lengthy books about crime and thrillers because they are full of suspenses. So I think you should definitely read this book if you enjoy such category. The next book that I'm going to recommend is a book by Ernest Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms. Well, so many people do not like this book. I used to like this book, but I don't like this book now. Talking of the story of this book, this book is inspired from the events that happened in Hemingway's life when he was enlisted in the World War First, and he volunteered the ambulance service in Italy, and it describes a love affair between him and an English nurse. So this book is pretty much a love story set against the backdrop of World War First. So this book talks about the harsh reality of war and the pain of lovers, and I don't know, maybe there is some kind of hopelessness that it makes so much appealing to me due to nostalgia or something. Whenever I think of this book, I end up liking it, but I know that this book is not this book is not loved by so many people, but I consider this book as a very good option for beginners. So these were my 7 recommendations in fiction categories. Now I'm talking about few of my favorites non-fiction books. So the very first book in the non-fiction category that I'm going to recommend is the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by the author Robert Kiyosaki. This book talks about financial education. Actually, this book is more about why financial literacy is important. This book is a pretty basic book in terms of finance. It talks about the terms like liability and assets and what they actually mean in financial terms. So this is not a very heavy book or a very life-changing book or a book that can make you millionaire, but it is a pretty basic book. It will trigger you to read more books on finance. I highly recommend this kind of book to the teenagers or people who have just started earning. Well, this book is heavily criticized by so many people, and I don't know about the criticism, but I think it's a very important book to read, or at least you should read it and find it out on yourself whether you agree with this book or not. The next book is the book that has changed my thinking, and the book is The 4 Agreements by the author Don Ruiz. So it's a self-help book, and it was my first ever non-fiction book. Basically, this book is about 4 agreements or 4 rules that we all should make to ourselves to have the peace within and to set out for the goals. Well, it's an incredible book. Once you start it, you will simply glide through it. The writing of this book is so much simple and so easy to understand. The important aspect of this book is that it really talks about domestication and how unconsciously we are following it, and we are setting our goals according to it. It's a kind of book that simply changes your mindset, and it simply makes you more focused on yourself. The last book of this video is Man's Search for Meaning by the author Viktor Frankl. Well, it's a kind of book that changes your life in a very subtle way. So basically, this book distinguishes between the mindset of people who do not give up and the mindset of the people who give up. It talks about that how giving a meaning to your life is so important for your survival. It has a term called logotherapy, and the real meaning of this word and how it is related to our attitudes is described in the book. For that, you need to read this book. Basically, this is a fascinating book by a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. So yeah, I think you should definitely check this book if you are looking for some kind of inspiration in your life. So this is the end of this video. Today, I think I have suggested some 10 books. Seven were fiction books and 3 were non-fiction books. If I give myself a chance to pick any 2 books in both categories, then I think in fiction category I'm going to pick The Alchemist because it is quite a popular book, and in non-fiction category I'm going to pick The Four Agreements. Again, it's a very popular book. So yeah. If you like the content of this video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, and please comment down below what do you think of these books and what kind of books you used to read in your early days, and how your reading experiences and reading choices are now being transformed and emerged and everything. And I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.